start with Zach and then go to Jim.
Well, I guess to ask you what we just asked Carter, but from an experienced player's perspective, just how do you manage time off in a gap like what you guys have had here, where on the one hand you want to stay sharp, you want to avoid complacency and those things, but on the other hand, I'm sure it is good to have that mental and sort of physical reset a little bit. Just what are the keys to kind of navigating that where maybe you don't lose that edge, but you do gain some of the sort of the restorative health, or you know what I'm saying? Sorry.
Yeah, so I've been lucky to play in a few bowl games over my career, so I've kind of had this kind of period of, you get a little bit of rest, and I think it's huge, obviously for the young guys, just helps them develop and stuff, because you're getting young guys a lot of reps that they might not get during the normal season, just because the older guys are kind of taking a little bit off their load. I think it's just important to just stay locked in mentally. I think obviously our first 2 weeks we didn't know who our opponent was, so we just kind of not relaxing, but taking it a little bit easier, just because you can only practice so much for somebody you don't know who it's going to be. So those first 2 weeks were pretty light, and then after the BAM game, we kind of really got into game prep, and I think that's kind of how you do it. Is once you're about 2 weeks out from a game, you kind of have to start to really lock in and get back into normal game speed stuff and game type of practices, game week type of practices. So I think it's really just it's more about the mentality of how kids are approaching it. Those first 2 weeks are often just more recovery based, but now we're just fully in game mode, and I think we got a lot of older guys that understand that it wasn't just this week, but last week we started, we really got to prepare for this team. We need every single second we can get.
We're going left to Mike and then Jim.
Yeah, Riley, you've had obviously career numbers in the passing game. Was that something the coaching staff pitched to you kind of when they were recruiting you and said, look, we see this in you, we want to use you like this, or did that come as maybe a surprise to you when this has kind of happened? And is there something that they saw in you that other coaching staffs didn't, that you've been with?
Yeah, definitely. I think they definitely saw a lot more in me than a lot of other staffs. I mean, personally, I feel like maybe the staff in my old school didn't really see a whole ton in me. But actually, on my visit, I actually talked to Coach Shanahan. I was like, "Hey, Coach, just give me a tight end screen. I'll show you what I can do." So, I was kind of joking at the time, but yeah, I think just throughout our time here, I mean, obviously they told me I was going to be involved in the pass game. That was a big thing for me coming out of Wisconsin, not having a lot of receiving yards. They definitely pitched me. They said, "Yeah, our tight end last year, Zach had 200-some passing yards," and so I was just like, "That's good for me, I'll take 200." So I've just been continuing to get more and more involved and just continuing to build trust. And I'm just happy that they keep giving me the ball. And Nando, it's awesome.
All right, we'll go on your left to Jim and then Ravi.
Really, a lot is made of the magnitude of the game, but that's because it is big. And how, as a team and as individuals, are you able to keep down the fact that this is a gigantic game, but if you win it, there's another one to play behind that? How are you guys able to manage those mental capabilities?
I think with the experience we have, I think it's a lot easier. We just kind of we understand what this is, and they were in the same situation last year. Where it's you have a really big game, but if you win, you get another one. So it's kind of like it's a one-game season. It's a really big game, but the same one is the same game we've been playing, for our whole lives. So, it's kind of just balancing those two aspects of hey, this is what we do. This is what we've been doing. This is our livelihood. It's just another step in our livelihood. But also, acknowledging the fact that if you don't win this one, it's over.
We'll go on the right to Ravi and then Daniel.
Yeah, we're going to start on Elijah Surratt. If you had to tell people one story about Elijah, football related or not, to try to help people understand a little bit more about him, who he is, what story would you tell?
That's a good question. I mean, it's just a lot of little things. You know what I mean? Honestly, I'll say just his work ethic. When we're in the weight room, this probably started, I don't even know if it was in the spring or summer or what it was, but he'd get all the receivers, we'd be working out, whatever, doing pull-ups or whatever, and, he'd sit there and he'd be he'd do one more rep. After everybody else dropped down, he'd just go and do one more rep. right? And so it's just kind of like that leadership. And then like all the rest of the receivers started doing one more rep. And like some of the tight ends joined in and started doing one more rep. So now all of a sudden, we got, a set of 10, but, we're doing 11. He's like bumping up the weight. Like he's doing like the lineman weight. So it's just like stuff like that where he's just like always trying to push like everybody around him, but like doing it from a point of leadership, right? Like he's not going to ask you to do something that he's not doing himself, which is like really the biggest thing that I think shows on and off the field for him is just the way he leads. He's like servant leadership. You know what I mean?
Stand right with Daniel, and then go to Pete.
On that mentality of like 1 week approach, I feel like we hear Sig just all year long preaching that. How much does it help you guys when he's kind of preaching the exact same thing, no matter the stakes or the stage, I guess, of a game?
I think it's huge. I think it keeps all of us grounded, right? And it just kind of keeps you focused on what's going on right now because, that next game, especially now, isn't guaranteed, and that's kind of how it is in the game of football, right? Like, you could always go down with the injury, whatever it may be. Like, that next game's never guaranteed. So you always got to take the advantage of every opportunity you have right now and make the most of it. It's just every game is like a one-game season, and that's kind of how we approach it, right? Like, if we're trying to get to our final goal, like, we need to win pretty much every single game. So, it's just like you can't let up 1 week, just because an opponent might not have the best record, or whatever it is. Every single week needs our full focus, and I think just him hitting on that all the time just kind of ingrains it in us.
Top left to Pete, and then Nicole.
Yeah, Riley, I guess, how many games of Alabama have you watched, or at least segments of games? And then what kind of problems do they present?
I've watched a good amount of Bama. I don't know exactly. I mean, full games, probably like 5 or so, and then a lot of cut-ups of them, too, on top of that. I think they have a lot of athletes. I mean, Bama's still Bama from that aspect. They got a lot of guys that are, big, strong, can fly around. So that obviously presents a problem whenever you're going against, a team like that. But they do a lot of like 7, 8 up looks, that they'll drop out of it or they'll bring 0, and that just is tough for everybody to handle because obviously O-line's got to sort it, QB's got to see his tells and stuff to see if it's really 0 or not, and if he's got to check something or if they're dropping out of it. So I think that'll be one of our biggest challenges is just seeing those. Bringing everybody up looks and trying to decipher what exactly is going on, if they're really bringing that pressure, if they're dropping out. I think that's one thing they do really well, and they have the athletes to be able to get out of it and, hold that bluff for a long time because, you got, freakazoids in the backfield that can get back there in 4-2, you know what I mean? So I think that'll be one of our biggest challenges.
Nicole, and then Andrew.
You talked about kind of the mentality of the break. Have you sensed, though, a difference in the energy now being less than a week out, knowing your opponent, that's kind of helped you guys potentially be even more like dialed in for what's to come?
Yeah, I think it definitely started last week. Sig, I really emphasized it in our team meeting. He was like, hey, like, it's go time. We need every single one of these practices. Like, we need every single, minute of prep that we can get. And so I do feel like a flip's kind of switched. And then obviously now coming back from Christmas, it's kind of like the same thing. It's just an even greater sense of intensity. Like, everybody knows, like, this is back to, like, real game stuff. You kind of get out of it for a little bit because you're not playing every Saturday. But now it's kind of back to, like, oh, yeah, like, we got a game this week. Like, it's real now. So, yeah.
We'll go Andrew, and then Lou.
Riley, I know this year in particular, you guys are this game is based on your individual teams this season, but historically speaking, you guys are the new kids on the block this year. Alabama's that historic team that's always done this. Is that added motivation? Is there like a statement I think you guys are trying to show also on the national stage against a team like that?
It seems like the media is definitely pushing that for sure. I open up Twitter a little bit, whatever, and I see something about that, and I try and stay off Twitter and Instagram too much around this time just because, I don't need all that outside noise. But, to us, it's, it's a big game because it's what we're trying to – it's the next step in our journey to try and do what we're trying to do. So, I don't think there's any, necessarily extra motivation, maybe a little bit for Sig, coming from there or whatever. But I think it's, we're trying to approach it the same way we approach every single opponent. It's a big game, but, it's got to be ourselves.
Go ahead, Lou, and then we'll go to Zoom. We'll have time for probably one on the Zoom.
When you were last in here, you said you woke up a champion after the Ohio State game. That kind of resonated. But what kind of games have you ever been in through the course of your football career, going back to high school, that at the time felt like the biggest game you'd ever been in?
Yeah, I'm sadly I've been on the wrong end of a few too many, but in high school we had a little state championship run my junior year, then ended up losing to Muskego, but that was like, one of the biggest games of my life because I was like, oh, like, this is, to go to Dakota State. So we lost in the semifinals to them. So I thought, that was a really big game. And then Minnesota every year when I was at Wisconsin, like that, my freshman year we went to OT, and so ended up winning OT, and it was the COVID season too, so it was even later than it normally was. So it was just like, oh, like, it's just like the final cap of kind of this crazy season. So that was a really big one for me. Obviously, any time you could win the Axe was a very exciting time. But then honestly, just a lot of games this year. Like, I mean, going to Oregon, going to Iowa, going to Penn State. I mean, it was just a lot of those games felt like, wow, like, like this is something serious. That you wake up the next day, you feel real good about what you've done.
All right, we'll take one from Zoom. Go ahead, Sammy.
Riley, you played Alabama last year. Holden played them and beat them last year as well. You talked about how they disguise their coverages. How much easier is it to, tell your fellow offensive players about the defense, knowing that you've seen it in person and not just on tape?
It's definitely helpful, because obviously you can watch as much tape as possible, but until you're in the game, like, it's a very different feeling. So I would say, like, just being able to, see it live, see game speed, see it from an on-the-field angle, you know what I mean? Like, obviously you're not from a first-person view when you're, like, watching tape or anything. Like, you don't get to be in somebody's helmet and watch it. But it's definitely extremely helpful when you can see it from a player's perspective on the field. I think it just, helps you. You feel it, you know what I mean? You don't just see it, but you feel it too. So I think just, feeling the coverages, feeling, how they come off the ball, how they do all that stuff, just how they play ball is just, vital. And any information that we can get is good.
Thanks, Riley. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Thank you.